I'm a simple man. I love Bretonnia, and I love the Bills, so I had to make a Buffalo Bills night. I'm absolutely stoked about how this turned out, and I'm excited to share it. Let me know what you think, and if you want to see how I did it, crack open the Bat Blue and grab some wings, because I'm about to get into it.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
First thing I had to figure out was the ornament on the helmet. I don't have the skills to sculpt my own, so I had to find a piece from the internet somewhere. I ended up going with these little metal casts of a buffalo that was maybe a little too big, but small enough to make work. Another option for a project like this is a charm bracelet bead. You could turn those into a helm ornament pretty easy. I tried to make the buffalo overall a little smaller by trimming down the legs. I think it worked out pretty good. You can't really tell on the helmet. A steady hand, a little bit of super glue, and some hope that this is going to work out. A white horse seemed appropriate, so I start out with a layer of Celestra Gray. I'm then going to go over everything but the recesses in Uthawan Gray, which is a little bit of off-white, and then hit the highlights with the pure white. This is a fast, simple way to make a white horse that turns out pretty good. Using an off gray like this for a white horse is a pretty old trick. These grays are easy to use, whites are hard. Most people will get a better result with Uthawan Gray than with something like White Scar. Moving on to the cloth, I've opted for a Macragge blue for my Bills blue. It's not a perfect match, but I do feel it's pretty close. Here I am just getting the inside of the cloth. As always, Black Templar contrast paint provides a nice dark color for the hooves. We just have to be careful not to get any on the gray of its fur. Next, I'm just going to start applying a slight off-white everywhere I want my shield and cloth to be white. Here I'm using Trooper White by 2 thin coats. Might be worth picking up. I find Citadel's or Games Workshop's whites to be overall pretty terrible. I much prefer 2 thin coats or Vallejo. And back to Macragge blue to get the blue parts of the outside of the cloth. Evil Sun Scarlet is going to make up the red of my base coat. Again, it matches the Bills colors fairly closely, it covers well, it's a solid color, easy to work with. Here you can see me using tape as a stencil. Originally, I wanted blue shields with a white border. I abandoned that plan due to issues with the custom decals that I'll get into later. But I had them all painted at one point and it was an absolute nightmare to get them back to white. I'm patting down with the tweezers here to make sure my tape has a solid seal on it so no paint leaks through. Good modeling masking tape is worth investing in. Now to add depth, we're going to hit everything with a thin layer of Nuln Oil and then going to raise the colors back up. Only on the red and blue, of course. And now we hit the white areas with a little bit of Soul Blight Gray. Once the shading was complete and I raised the highlights back to its base colors, I started work on the Zubaz pattern. Using a fine brush, I just very carefully started making my design with Macragge blue, trying to be both varied and interesting. Once happy with that work, we are going to carefully do an outline with our Evil Scarlet color. I studied a lot of Zubaz patterns for this, and what I've come to the conclusion is when you do these lines, it doesn't have to be perfect. The lines in the actual products are not uniform. Some strokes are thick, some are thin, some lines are touching, some are not. Once I was satisfied with the pattern, I started doing all the leather bits on the horse with the classic snakebite leather. Now I'm hitting the metal bits with plate armor from 2 thin coats. I often make these decorative shields on the body of the horse colorful, but given how this horse already has a lot going on with the Zubaz pattern, I opted just for pure metallics here. Now we're going to highlight the blue, highlight the red, highlight the skin. Now that I'm happy with the horse, I move on to the Western New York Knight. Given how light on detail my helm ornament was, I decided rather than use traditional acrylics, I wanted to use contrast paints, which means lightening the black from the primer back up to Wraithbone. I decided to do the same for the knight's clothes, just to make it easier to cover with the red and blue. And nothing really new here. We're going to take our McCrag blue for our blue parts, our Evil Sun Scarlet for our red parts. We're going to try to avoid the leather bits we have to cover as best we can. And we're going to get this knight painted up. Starting to come together, and now I'm just going to hit my helmet buffalo with a little bit of ball red. This red's fairly close to Evil Sun Scarlet, but I'm hoping the detail will show through better if I use contrast paints rather than traditional acrylics. Now back to using our plate armor, we're going to hit the metal parts of our knight. I find this part to be the most satisfying part of painting all these Bretonnian knights. I feel like once the metal of their armor is there, it starts to feel more complete, more satisfying, you know what I mean? I'm hitting the metal of the shield here. You can also very clearly see right now my shield is blue. That was what I wanted originally. I just couldn't make it work with the decals. Now to add color to my lance, I'm going to use a little bit of masking tape and get some red and blue on here. If you want a more detailed guide on how I do it, I have a whole video dedicated just to this. This side of the knight has a sleeved arm, and I decided I wanted to imitate the 2 white stripes of the Buffalo Bills uniform. And I did that by doing a base coat white, masking it with tape, and then painting over it with blue. Everything's starting to come together. While I was painting this, I was honestly really stoked by this point. It was turning out better than I thought it would. But here I'm just adding some details to the knight, just using my contrast leather paints to paint these leather bits. And of course, no work is complete without a little bit more of Nuln oil. And then of course, going back over with those base colors and bringing the high points back up. Adding some highlights here to try to impress people. Here I'm highlighting the red, and honestly, just some light detailing highlight work can really add so much depth to a model. It really can make it a difference between a meh paint job and one that will impress your friends. I really loved how this looked with the blue shields. I'm a little miffed that didn't work out, but such is life. But up until this point, everything has come along really nicely. Okay, here you can see me start to do the decal work, and here you can see that I am back to white shields. Essentially, I had to custom order the shield decals, and I couldn't find any that were completely opaque. Even though I'd buy the red standing buffalo, the color would be completely washed out on the blue backdrop. Maybe there are vendors who could do it, but in my experience, if you wanted a custom decal, you either had to put it on a black paper background instead of translucent like these are, or you could do it in white or black and those are opaque, but trying to do it in color would be somewhat transparent. Thus, at the last minute, I replaced the blue on those shields very painfully with white. You can clearly see me struggle to get these decals off the sheets, but I will say once they were off, besides the fact that they weren't opaque, they look really good, the color is right, and after some micro sol and micro set, they look great on the miniature. And of course, same scenario with the knight. Luckily, white is a minor color for the Buffalo Bills, so adding the white shields still worked out pretty good. And it's also really common for the red standing buffalo to be displayed on white. So I'm still very happy with this end product. Very, very happy as a Bills fan. And that leaves us with an awesome Western New York knight. Honestly, this was an expensive project after all the mess ups with the slide decals and the head ornament. It was worth it. I love it, and I think when I bring it to the tabletop out here in Western New York, people are going to love it too. If you want to see more content like this, let me know by leaving a comment or a like. Thanks for watching.